Good evening, everybody. I am your host, Kyle, and you are tuned into the Weird Weekends edition of Encrypted Connections. This is episode 3. And tonight, we have a guest coming all the way from Michigan, right? Michigan, Randy?
Yes, Michigan.
Michigan. Okay, all the way from Michigan. I heard this gentleman's story, and I have to say that uh, I was on the edge of my seat the whole time. I don't think I don't think I blinked once when I heard this. It's one of the most compelling, amazing, and moving, emotional stories, encounters, experiences that I've ever heard. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Randy. How are you, Randy?
I'm good. How you doing?
I'm doing well, brother. I'm doing well. I'm happy to have you here.
Happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. So we're just going to get right into it, man. Tell us the story, the one that I saw that started in when you were a child, please, because this is just incredible.
Right. I'll start from the very beginning. A lot of what
Sure.
people heard was the barn incident, but um, by later digging up and messing around with my cheese or my Swiss cheese kind of memory that was all messed up by hypnosis, which was wonderful. Anyway, I found in some old footage of Strawberry Lake that's where it all started before the barn incidents. I'm gathering that I didn't have two Sasquatch friends. I just had one, and he followed me home. But this happened a couple years before the we moved to the old farmhouse, and this was at a lake a little bit north, and it was a campground at the time, and we went there for a couple summers before the summer of the I guess the chimp incident, because we actually had other kids playing with these chimps, and a couple of the mothers, including my mother, got to see him eventually. But we went there twice during that summer, and the first time our visit was relatively short. It was like a 2 or 3 day weekend or something like that, and we were going to come back in August. That was going to be a whole week. And when I first went there for those 2 days, I was 8 years old, and I didn't know what was in the woods. I had a little bit of inkling of what kind of animals there were, and I actually had gone to a circus with one of my relatives and got to meet Tarzan and Zubini and some of the animals, and I rode the elephants and got to see uh, got to see some of the primates they had, and that ties in a little bit later to the August visit at the Strawberry Lake, and because at first my parents didn't believe me, and I was telling them there was chimps in the woods, and I at first it was just one chimp, and then it was four. There was two that were the same size as me, and two smaller ones. And
And how old were you at this time?
I was 8 years old at the time, and
Yeah.
this was way out in the middle of nowhere. This campground was all rustic, and we're camping there, and I don't know. Every time I would go off a little ways, I would see one of these things, and I don't know. I thought there was a lot of animals up there that that shouldn't be there, like thinking that there's a chimp up there. But I thought there's raccoons, and there's porcupines up here, there's beavers up here, there's cougars, there's bear, there's coyotes, there's all these things. I was 8 and I didn't know any better, but I did tell my parents. They didn't believe me, and I'd met another family out there, a family through this one older kid that I'd met out there too, and there were some like hippie families that had this area closed off that was like a little nudist colony, and I'll get to that. That works in a little bit more in our second visit there. But like the first visit, one time before I left, I wanted to go check out more of the lake and walk around the lake. And my dad was in the canoe that we just got that year, and he said for some reason that it was okay that he would watch me and follow me around with the canoe on, because this I was supposed to stay on the trail, the shoreline by all the campgrounds that went all around this lake. And I don't know why they let him. I've just been there for so many years. They thought that could do that at 8 years old. They're just terrible parents. But anyway, I got a little ways towards the back of the lake where there was a swamp back there, and there wasn't as many campgrounds, and some of them were vacant right then. And they started walking alongside of me, and I started playing around in these ferns when I was looking around for frogs and snakes. And I noticed earlier before that they were logging in the back of this the swamp adjacent to this lake, and I had asked my dad about that, and I didn't understand why they logged, and they had the machines there over the weekend, and the workers were gone, and I started working my way back there just to check out these big machines. I thought they're kind of cool looking, and one was locked and the other one was open, and I got in there. I just wanted to go in there and like make some car noises and play around and look. I didn't intend on doing anything bad. I wasn't that kind of a kid.
Yeah.
And it wasn't more than a few seconds after I was making a few noises, the bigger chimp, what we thought was a chimp, though I get to that later, but he pushes me out of the way, not making any sound. He grabs the levers and stuff. And this particular one was like a crane and had just mostly levers in it, and he pulled one of the things off. And he was like violently like pulling the thing with his feet and his hands on it, and ripped it off and started smashing stuff. And I was going like, wow, this is loud. Somebody's going to hear this. I'm going to get blamed for it. And I'm getting out of here. This is crazy. And like I slid around behind him and got out of there. And sure enough, as soon as I got up to the swamp, on the other side of the swamp in the lake, there was another camper that heard it. And he's going like, what's going on back there? And I'm going like, I don't know. I'm like trying to get out of there. And he's going like, oh, it looks like some teenagers back there. And that's what I found the newspaper article about it. They blamed it on my older friends that I'd made at the hippie colony over there that the cops didn't like. They blamed it on them later. I'll tell you about that. But
those darn teenagers.
and even in that, I found the newspaper article, and it even says the guy describes as barefoot teenagers all dressed in black with black hoodies on in 1975, and like all busting up some equipment. But I just kind of like got out of there really fast, and I started walking around the rest of the lake, and I got up to the lake camp store where somebody recognized me. They're going like, well, we've been looking for you for like 3 hours, and I don't really remember like 45 minutes being gone or so. And but that was just some of the incidents that happened then. And we came back in August, and the other friend that I made friends with there, and he had a sister and some other kids said by when I got back there, they were playing with him too. And then his mom named him Sammy. And my mother finally found out that I was hanging around, these naked hippie people. She came over. She was actually okay with it. And the weird thing is, when she was over there, she was talking to my friend's mom, and they, she brought up the things, my son says if there's monkeys in these woods, and my other friend's mom goes like, oh, you mean Sammy? Oh yeah, he's like, and I've been looking for this newspaper article too, and I haven't found it. She pulled out an older newspaper article that said something to the like of a lost chimp back there that the circus workers like that came through stayed there at 1 year, and like they figured it was a chimp, and it stayed there over the years and made it, and now there's 4 of them.
So wait, you're
that's actually the conversation my mom and my friend's mom were having back and forth. And like,
so your friend's mom named the thing.
Yeah, I know. We're going like, why did you name him Sammy? It's going like, Sammy, Strawberry Lake, and we're going like, well, I don't get it, but like, yeah, we were sitting there talking, and like, my mom's taking her clothes off because they're all naked. And I'm like, oh, my friend's mom naked, and like, we don't care if you're naked. And like, I was 8 years old, I didn't care. Like, I was, around for a couple more minutes as they're talking. He actually showed up at a tree, like where she leaves bananas and apples for him, like about 20 or 30 yards away. So my mom actually thought I wasn't crazy then, that there was something like that. And they could never get him to come up to them. They would come up to the kids, but the moms were going like, here, Sammy, here's some food. And they leave it by the tree. He'd run away and come back and get it. And we honestly thought they were a chimp, they're black. And I'm trying to remember what else happened. There was a few other things that happened, like, we're playing with them and splashing around with them and whatnot. But my mom actually tried to get them on video, and she had a Super 8, like silent, thing that you put on like reel to reel, thing, and put it on the screen.
Sure.
And she was trying to get me with them, and she did, but it's really blurry. She was laying on her belly. I've been on my a YouTube page, and I've been trying to clean it up. I'll have to send it out to somebody and pay him to clean it up. It's pretty bad, but you can see that I'm sitting in this canoe next to the lake, and it's on shore. And Sammy's sitting to my right, but he's like on the other side of the canoe. He's got his arm around me. His arm's on my shoulder, and he's like, we're rocking the canoe back and forth. And then he sees my mom, and then the two other ones run up the tree. My mom tries to capture them running up the tree too, and they're just like, everything's just blurry. That camera doesn't usually have that problem, but it was, an awful camera to begin with back in those days. And
I think too, I really do believe that there's whether it's that sheen on their hair that they've shown, under a microscope, where the hair kind of reflects different colors in the light, something about it. I think that's why so many pictures are blurry, because, well, that, and I know they can manipulate energy. So, who knows what they do to the camera.
My theory is they use infrasound and ultrasound at the same time.
I agree totally.
Well, like, say, a picture, if you ever seen like a bass speaker hit with, bass, it gets blurry. It moves around like that.
Absolutely.
What they do is they'll hit a low bass like that, and I can feel it in my chest, and I can never hear it. That's how I've been finding them. But it's below our octave. That's what infrasound is. It's like 19 something, and we can only hear it at 20 decibels or something like that. It's lower, and you put it on a speaker, and it'll shake like crazy, and you can't hear a thing.
Right.
And they whistle at you really loud in a tone that we can't hear, and they can project that out to make them look like they're blurry, but it's only to you. If you're standing like 2 feet on the other side of that effect, you're going to see something totally different. So they're using sound. That's why people get like, fear and nausea and stuff like that. Those are all, those are all the same things that, infrasound produces. And that's about the only thing I can think it is. Anything else is like really so supernatural and crazy. It's, I don't know. I've got so many videos of them because I've been putting cameras on my back and my front, and like they'll, uncloak a little bit or come out of their hiding in my back camera, and you can almost see the sound waves or where it's distorted coming off them, like a dropping a rock in a pond. But like, anyway, I'm not a scientist. I don't know, but like, we'll go on from my stories, and I'm going to talk about like their cloaking abilities, because I'm just guessing and it's all my theories. But anyway, just because the sounds he made later in the barn, but after Strawberry Lake and all that, and she got that in that Super 8 footage, and that's what brought my memory back, because I cleaned it up. And boy, that was really weird, because like I'd remembered all the other stuff after. It took me years to remember all the barn incident stuff, because the government got into, and had us all hypnotized. Us kids were talking about it, and we brought the pictures to school. That's what got us busted. But I'll get to that. That's
hey,
it.
Real quick.
Figured out.
Real quick, I want to touch on this real quick. Christopher Noel, thank you for being here, brother, from Impossible Visits. He has the comment here. It says EMF produces all the same symptoms, plus they disrupt electronic devices. Just wanted to throw that out there real quick. So, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's exactly what, if you're really close though, I've had some really bizarre stuff happen in my earlier GoPros that I can't explain. That looks like something out of a what do you call those, like those kaleidoscopes that you're looking in. It just made the picture look all weird and twisted, and it was like that in certain spots. I wasn't really exactly sure what it was, because this area had a lot of mineral deposits with springs in it that could have magnetic, I don't know.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff out there that we don't know about. And like,
absolutely.
And certainly Sasquatch is one of them. And they're an enigma all enrolled in an enigma. I mean, they're just
Yeah, it's a big giant riddle.
and that, like I said, like I don't know how they figured out where I lived after I moved, and then we moved to this old farmhouse, and that's when some of the really weird stuff started happening. And um, because we moved in there in October, so I didn't go in the barns much because it was um, fall and winter, and it was spring and summer when things started happening. When I was going down and playing in those barns all the time, and sometimes when my friends would come over, and then my parents rented out the big hay barn to a farmer, and he loaded up with hay bales. And I was seeing weird things in there when I was building forts in the hay bales and playing in these barns, but I didn't think much of it because every time I saw it, and every time my parents were seeing something when they were walking the dogs, it was already running away, and they're running on all fours, and we had no idea that even the general knowledge of Sasquatch back then was so distant, so almost to nothing that nobody's ever heard of them running on all fours. They expected you to see something really large running on 2 feet, but especially the juveniles, when you see them booking away from you, and all you're getting is the rear view, and they're all hairy and they're on fours, and the way their feet bend in the middle, you're thinking dog. I mean, a really, really big dog. I mean, that's what we kept on thinking. So my parents were concerned about me going out in the woods and in the barn about the dog thing. And then a friend of mine comes over from church outing or something like that. This is still summer, but it's late summer, and we don't have nothing to do, and I don't have hardly any friends out there because we just moved out there. And we decided to go on a bike ride to this woods that's about 2-3 miles from our house. And this is when I'm 10 years old, and this is still kind of crazy. I talked to him about it today, and it's like, how did we, but kids did this stuff back then, and like we get up to the woods and we're looking around. And there's a lot of people in the woods back then hanging out in vans, listening to music.
Yeah,
And
hippie
so I
stuff.
found some other kids back there. But before we found them, we found a weird bush that we went in there. There's this area that had all these big um, honeysuckle bushes and stuff like that were huge. And you went underneath them, and they were like a great big huge mushroom underneath. And it was about 3 or 4 feet tall underneath some of these things that were all hollowed out. And we found one that connected to all these other ones, and it had this great big one that had like old sleeping bags and blankets are all torn up in one edge, and they had like glass bottles into sizes, and like little twigs that were all in little piles, and they had Christmas ornaments, broken ones hanging up all over the place, and pictures that were like from the pictures that came in picture frames. And then there was a pile of magazines, and we figured it was like a bum living in there, right?
Yeah.
So we just left, and we didn't see anything there, and we went back in the woods a little bit further, and we found a couple other kids, one boy that was older than us, Russ, and I was with one kid named Mike, and we found another kid back there our age with Russ back there building a camp back there, and they're going to stay the night in the woods. And so there's 2 Mikes and a Russ and me. We helped them put up the last rung on this like ladder they're trying to build up to their tree fort. They never did get to build, and we were interested in staying there with them, so we were going to go ride our bikes back and get our gear and come back. And it took so long to get our gear and get permission that it was dusk when we got back. And what we didn't know, the one trail was a big loop in the middle, and then there was another one that went to where we were supposed to go that was further down. But we took the wrong trail. We couldn't find our friends, so we found some pines and just put our tent up for the night. And it got dark, and I don't know how long we didn't fall asleep or anything like that before maybe half an hour or 45 minutes. It wasn't that long, I guess. And we heard this older boy screaming in the woods for his friend Mike. And of course, I'm with this boy named Mike, and we think it's just some prank. They're calling Mike, or they're trying to scare us or something. And we start hearing screams and howls, and we hear Mike screaming, and Russ is screaming. We're the sounds that we heard. We didn't even know that all these roars and growls and stuff, and we just left everything there. And it was dark. It was probably getting close to 11 o'clock or something like that, because I know my parents were still awake when we rode our bikes back with our flashlights holding on to on the handlebars and stuff to get back, and left all the gear there. We're going to come back in the morning and get it. My parents thought it was pretty funny that we chickened out. We told them what happened. We're going like, yeah, those boys were just trying to scare you. But we went back in the morning to get our gear. And that spot, that state land was closed off, and there was a news van, Channel 13 Eyewitness News, was there interviewing Russ, the older boy. There were state police there were local police, there were police on horseback, all sorts of searchers with bullhorns calling Mike, 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 and what else was there? Ambulance was rolling in, and we watched, Russ tell the news crew that that a hairy bum took Mike, because we told them about the bush that we found, and we thought there was a bum living out there. So that's what he told the news crew. So that's what everybody was looking for out there.
The hairy bum.
Yeah. But this one guy comes up to us after we asked the cop to go get our gear. We said we were camping out there. We got to get our gear. He said, no, he can't. He radios some guy, some Native American comes over, calls himself John Redcorn. Yeah, I know. John Redcorn's a real common name in the cartoon and all that stuff. That wasn't his real name. I can tell you his real name was Jerry. I can't tell you the last name, but it was what did he tell me later? He was in the Korean and Vietnam War as a wind talker, but he got into that division. He tells me that later, but that's quite a bit later. Well,
those guys were some really, really incredible, like what they did. Those wind talkers,
yeah,
crazy stuff.
Yeah, and then he tells us that we got to leave, and that he'll bring us our gear. That wasn't going to be the last we're going to see. And he did bring us our gear, and he had a few questions for us, and we told him what we heard, and that was it. Until the next day we heard about the kid getting picked up later that day, and he was fine. I think they came back and told us that he didn't have any clothes on, but he wasn't hurt at all. He couldn't talk. He was in shock, and I really only saw him one time after that, until a week later when the barn stuff happened, and then none of us really talked about it after that. But anyway, a week went by or so, and then there was things going on to south of me about a mile, I think it was 3/4 of a mile, something like that, to my nearest neighbors, and there were some kids living down there. There was a couple of houses full of kids down there, and most of them were all my age. And I was hanging around with them, and one that was a year older or a year younger than me was at about this time, I think it was getting close to Labor Day. He was saying that he was seeing an orangutan in the cornfield next to their house that connected our two houses. And I lived in an old farmhouse then, and it had a creek that ran between our two houses, and it was pretty rural in those days. There was a working farm north of us. There was an old abandoned farm to the west of us, and one to the east of us. And there were more like hobby farms, and neighbors were few and far between out there. And I'm just trying to set this up. It was just a lot different, this Caledonia Alto area back then was totally different back then. And anyway, this cornfield that went in between our two houses, this kid was spending all the time there, and we just thought, I didn't put anything together because he's talking about an orangutan. And we thought he was making an imaginary friend up. This went on for a few days, and we were doing our own thing. We ended up tearing up some of his dad's lawn, his brother and the neighbor's kid and I, and we had to replace the lawn. So I didn't come over for I don't know, a few days or something, because his dad was mad. I came over on Labor Day weekend. I don't know if it was Friday or Saturday. I think it was a Friday. I don't know if it was, a longer weekend or what back then, whenever it fell. But my friend Tim, the one that was looking for the orangutan, was there. The rest of the family was gone. He had a couple other brothers, and he had a younger sibling that was actually home with a babysitter. And when I knocked on the door, the babysitter told me, "Oh, yeah, Tim's over with troll friend. Apparently, she'd seen him from the kitchen window and said he looked like a troll popping out of the cornfield. And I'm like, okay. Well, the cornfield was like not very far from the house, and there was a little tree line, and the cornfield was on the other side of it on this little fence. And I go over there, and Tim's sitting there in his underwear, his clothes are next to him. He's sitting on one of those red kickballs, and he's got like his sister's toys, Barbie dolls. And he had a sister. I forgot about. He had a sister and two brothers, and even the younger, the youngest sibling, the baby, was at home. All the rest of them were gone. And he had the Tonka toys out there, and he was trying to, coax this thing out of the cornfield. He said, and he read that, there was no internet back then or nothing. He had an Encyclopedia Britannica things, and he looked up orangutans, and he said the researchers found that this kid's like 8 or 9 years old telling me all this, and I'm telling him, going like, what? He's going like, yeah, researchers are going like, you take more clothes off, the more comfortable they get around you. So he's sitting out there in his underwear. The kid was actually right. He showed me later, and he made me read it. But he's going like, he was just here. I'm going like, yeah, sure. And he's going like, he tried to whistle or whatever he did to try to get him coax him out, and all of a sudden he did. He popped his head out of there, but he didn't come any further out. So Tim's like pushing the Tonka toys towards him. He's trying to get him to come out. He comes out, and he sits on his butt and like holds his legs up to his chest and wraps his arms around him and sits out about maybe like 3 or 4 feet from the cornfield in front of us. And Tim's still trying to communicate with him and pushing these toys, and he's pushing the toys away real, softly. And then he throws that red ball at him, and he hits it with his left hand, the juvenile Sasquatch, and hits it so hard it goes up into a tree and pops it. And Tim thinks it's just amazing that he did that, but I'm just like, he just hit that with a backhand and popped that. That's incredible. That's a lot of power. I'm thinking, and like, Tim's not taking anything serious, and he wasn't that kind of kid who was acting all goofy. And then all of a sudden he gets closer to the little Sasquatch, and the Sasquatch grabs his arm and starts to pull him into the cornfield. And Tim's still laughing the whole time.
Oh boy.
And I'm like, this isn't right. And I tried to grab him and separate him. I couldn't, but like then the Sasquatch just looks at me, and like he lets go of Tim, and he gets me in a bear hug. And like Tim thinks that's funny too. And I couldn't almost breathe. He just gave me this great big hug, and all of a sudden he just lets go, and he goes right back in the cornfield. And I'm going like, look, Tim, we got to go tell somebody about this. Your parents are here. My dad's home. We'll go up there, put your clothes back on. I talked to him, go back into the house, and we told the babysitter where we're going to go, and we started walking up to my house. And there's a little fence along the cornfield by the road, and like he's going, like, don't worry, he's not going to follow us. Orangutans won't go across the fence, and they won't go across the creek up there. They don't like water, blah, blah, blah. And then we're like, well, where did he come from? Oh, some circus or something. I'm still not putting this together in my head, about the Strawberry Lake thing for some reason. Because he looked like when we saw him, he was considerably, had like more of a brownish red tint before his hair would go, black into his skin. And he looked like an orangutan. I didn't think like chimp. Maybe they change color when they get older. I don't know. But it could have been the sunlight hitting him just right. But like I was still thinking it was an orangutan, but I still wasn't sure. And Tim was like trying to talk me into it the whole way up there. And we get to go see my dad, and he doesn't believe us. He's just laughing at us, as a matter of fact. And we tried talking him into it for a while, and then Tim had to go home. It was dinner time, and I went and had dinner, and I told my parents, well, I'm going to go play down in the barns. I like to do that after dinner or something like that, because there wasn't a whole lot of TV stations and cable and all that, and there wasn't any of that. Well, they were actually concerned about this dog thing that we're seeing, so they didn't really like the idea of me go down there. I said I'll go to the milking barn, which is 2 stories, and you could close off the second story. You can close all the hay barn doors on the second floor and that close in casters and shut them with a little thing. And the only other way up was to these 2 ladders, and they had little doors on top of the ladders, and you can latch those too. So I did that, and I convinced him I'd be fine up there. I had all my Tonka toys and a little city built up there, and I had a couple piles of hay that us kids had put up there with ropes on each of them, and we put a loop on each of the rope, and the piles of hay were about like 20, 25 feet away from each other. So we played up there often, and it had like a couple of those old towers too, where you could get up in a ladder and look out over the roof and outside. And they were just like big enough for one person. It was a really cool little barn, but it's not there anymore. But anyway, I no sooner get down there, get it all closed up, and um, one of those ladders, the doors on there starts banging, and I'm thinking it's my daddy's gonna, tell me I got to come back or something like that. And it says banging really hard, and it breaks open. Oh, I forgot to tell you about the fact that that Tim back when in the cornfield thought he could make this little Sasquatch say Mike, and he thought he named it Mike. I figured he was trying to mimic the word Mike that he heard when the searchers were looking for the boy over with the bullhorns, and he's
Oh yeah.
like that once when we were down there. So like that's what Tim called him. So like when he popped up in the barn, I wasn't too afraid of him because Tim had me convinced that like, he's been around him for a week and he hasn't any. And I've been seeing him in the barns and outside every once in a while that we figured out what it was. And some of his brothers and I had seen him too. And I was convinced I was confronting somebody's pet at one time, a pet orangutan. He was really common. He didn't really scare any of us ever. So when he came in the barn, it was like, and he busted the door, I was like, I can fix that. And he goes over and plops in the furthest pile of hay over on the other side of the barn. We had those two ropes, and I went over by him. I sat in that other pile of hay. It was about 20 feet away from him, and he's wiggling his feet and stuff, looking at me. And I'm like, I remembered all the noises and stuff Tim was trying to get him to do, like whistling. And when he said Mike, so I started making sounds back and forth to him. And every time I did a sound like a cat, he would do a cat, but he would do like everything a cat would do, and all these different meows. Or the same thing with dog, he'd bark and growl and like what are the other sounds? Like did a duck and a cow. And then he would after me, he would do it. And like I did a baby's cry. I could do a really good baby's cry. And he did one that sounded just like a human baby. It was so creepy. But then I did this other weird kind of whistle, half, it was two sounds at once and that I could make. And I wanted to see if he could top that. And that's when he started doing that weird stuff where he looked like he was mounting. He was like, looked like he was whistling. I couldn't hear any sound. And all of a sudden he looked like he was mounting for a second. And I was going, wait, it only happened for a second. I was like, what's up with that? And for some reason I decided to get closer and check his feet out. I took my shoes off and I put my feet up against this. I just think he's an orangutan. If I ever thought anything else, none of that would have ever happened. I would have just been too scared.
Yeah.
Because I had the other, experiences what I thought were chimps and like, going to the circus, and I was pretty comfortable being around these things, but, I was a little bit leery. I wasn't really sure this still wasn't an orangutan. So like, I put my feet up against and he ended up pushing me off of him. Like we were playing cars, like when you're kids and you push each other's feet, and he kind of pushed me and I rolled backwards to the pile of hay with the rope there. So I grabbed the rope and I put my foot in it, and I did this great big run around this thing where I had one foot in there and I run around and spin around in there, and I plopped in the pile of hay, and I looked at him and he like looks at me and he grabs the rope and he starts going upside down while he's holding the rope, and his feet go up into the rafters, and I go like, oh my God, this old orangutan is going to kill himself. He's going to hang himself, and he's got the rope in his other hands while he's holding on to the rafters. And he pulls the rope taut and he pushed off with his feet off the rafters and did the same thing I did, but like 10 times faster, almost like a cartoon. So, and he flops down. He's right in the middle of the pile of hay. He just sits there with his chin up and everything, like, And I'm like, I thought it was so cool. So I beat my chest like a total dumbass Gilligan. I beat my chest. And then he looks at me and he stands up. I mean, right away. And he was sitting down, and he stands up, and he started beating his chest. But when he did that, his eyes glowed red, and it was the loudest, most jungle ape weird screaming sounds I've ever heard. I freaked out, and I saw his teeth in the back for the first time, because that was the first time he opened his jaw up that far enough to where I could see him. And I knew it was an orangutan. I freaked out, and I think it already had my shirt off because he was already tugging on it. So I was just wearing my pants and no shoes, and I ran as fast as I could to the nearest hay bale door, and I tried to unlatch it. And like he grabbed my ankle just as I started unlatching it, and he's like pulling me back, and he gets on top of me, and this door starts banging, and I'm thinking it's finally my dad, and then it breaks, and it's his mom. Well, the second floor of this barn wasn't really high. It was a milking barn, so they kept them kind of low to keep the heat in. And then, the second floor wasn't that high either. It was just to throw the hay bales in to feed the cows to milk them downstairs. And so it was only about 7.5 feet up to the next floor from the ground.
So
And she gets up in there and sits right next to me, and I'm like pinned down by Mike there.
Hold on one second. So your neighbor had been playing with him for a week, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, trying to coax him out of the I don't think he got him out of the cornfield too much.
Yeah, and to that point, there were no other ones. It was just the little guy.
Yep.
And now mom.
No adults either. And yeah, we never. And that was the weird thing about Strawberry Lake too, is we never saw any adults. We just thought they were chimps. Well, I mean, if we had any indication that was anything else, it would have changed everything. But we just, I don't know. There wasn't a lot of information out back in 1975.
Right, and I think that this is a kind of an important point too. I tend to believe a lot of the times when they get caught out in the open, it's because of a little one.
Yeah, probably
that a little one snuck away or is causing some kind of problem, and mom's got to go get it because it wasn't listening. And then she's put in a position, or dad's put in a position where now they get caught on camera. Because I don't think, I know that they're intelligent enough to, if they want to remain hidden, they're going to remain hidden they could probably remain hidden for just about forever if they wanted to.
Well, I mean, what I tell people like hunters go, look, I've been in those woods for 300 years and I've never ever seen a Sasquatch back when I was hunting dinosaurs with a brick. But I'll go okay, you go into the woods and you're up in your tree stand, seriously, say you're a mile from your car, you're going to be able to hear somebody when you're in a tree stand and pull up next to your car. You're going to hear them come all the way up the road and get out of their car and come into the woods. Well, what do you think something that's got superior hearing and eyesight and lives in the woods is going to do? Just sit there and go like, okay, I'm going to come here and go hang out and watch the hunter. No, he's going to be long gone. I mean,
yeah, they know.
Got plenty of time, and they've already got their places picked out where they're going to go when somebody's going to, because more than likely they know exactly where you put your tree stand, and they
of course they do.
Yeah. There's no outsmarting them. Trail cams aren't going to work. I keep them for security when I go camping, when I go back into town or something, or if I want to keep them away from my tent. Or one investigation, I had them surrounded somebody's house because they were like peeking in the windows and stuff, and you'll never capture them in one of those. They're too noisy and got so many lights coming on, and they just look odd. No matter how you can camouflage them on a tree, they stick out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, no. And I think too, I believe that they can see infrared.
Yeah. Some of my infrared cameras can pick up the infrared beams coming off the, if you film a trail cam when it's working with an infrared camera, you can see the infrared beam coming out of it if there's any kind of moisture in there.
Yep.
And I'm sure they can see that. Even deer can see it. I mean, deer come up to I put some fake camouflage on my trail cams, when I used to try to capture something, but even the deer are just kind of huh, what? Oh, I see you.
Yeah. Yeah. I say this a lot. It's because I believe it's truly because they still have the connection to the earth and to the abilities that we have inside of us, but we've been pulled away from them because we rely so much on outside sources of things, technology being the main thing that makes us distance ourselves from the energies of the planet and everything around us.
Right.
So they have those abilities. They're just so in tune with everything.
Yeah. We've lost that somewhere along the way.
Yeah, a long time ago.
Well, anyway, at that point where she came into the barn, she sits next to me and rips my pants off. The reason why they do this, and why they did that to Mike, and I'm pretty sure is they have to present you to the alpha male daddy, and you're not gonna smell, right unless you have, your stinky clothes off. Especially if most humans will probably wet themselves and get all,
Yeah, right.
Well, I'm serious. In an encounter,
Yeah.
that's going to happen to a lot of people, and the shoes go right away with
Yep.
the socks, and those are smelly. So you got to be accepted by them, and they take a lot of kids like that, and they're just playmates, and they don't have any intention of keeping them or hurting them or anything like that. But they don't know a lot about us that far as that we're
Right.
not as durable as they are.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
But I think that's what they were intending to do, and they gave me I had a belt on, and she pulled my pants off and gave me a scar from my belly button all the way. It's still there today, all the way down to my left of my crotch and my inner thigh, and it didn't bleed or anything, but it ripped the skin open because their fingernails are so long, and shredded my pants. And she was going to take me with me, and she looks right after she did that, while I'm still pinned down by the juvenile. My dad's coming down there with a 16 gauge shotgun with the males on the other side of the barn that he doesn't see. And I'm pinned down and I can't do anything. Mike's going like that on my face. And I can't move or scream or anything, but I know what's going on. I mean, it wasn't the fact that he was holding me down either. I really couldn't move. And then when she sees him, she decides it's time to go and grabs Mike, the juvenile Sasquatch. And as she's jumping out that door, the hay-bale door that she broke in, she has Mike in her hands, and Mike grabs my arm and drags me halfway out that door, and I fall before he loses his grip. Naked in front of my dad, fall right into my back in the deep grass down there, which broke my fall pretty good, but it still knocked the wind out of me. And her and the male are not really moving really fast, but they're making a good clip out of the the back of the property behind the barns back there, and everything's going okay until I scream. I had to scream up there in the barn. I couldn't scream when I finally got my air back, from falling. My dad's picking me up, and I screamed, and then Mike just freaks out and breaks loose from his mom and comes back running on all fours through all this long grass, so we could see all the grass parting before us. And then he stands up and about maybe 5-6 feet in front of us, and he looks at my dad, and he looks at me, and I'm crying and screaming, not knowing what the hell's going on. And he grabs my arm, Mike does it, and he tries to pull me along, I don't know what he was thinking. I thought he was going to eat me or something, but he just thought I was, he thought, now that I'm looking back, he probably thought that my dad was hurting me, that he didn't know that I fell. I don't think he saw that, and that I fell and landed on my back, and I was still freaking out. And so my dad shot into the air, which scared the adults away and the juvenile for a minute, but the adults kept on going through the cornfield down to didn't see them again. They went all the way down to the creek, I think. And actually I think it was the male got his foot caught on the fence and dragged it into the freaking cornfield, before it let go of his foot, and pulsed with it and everything. It was amazing. This is all happening within seconds. And the juvenile Mike comes right back. He starts charging us. So we go back into the barn. The first door doesn't even close, right? Because it's old, rickety, 120 some year old milking barn. So we go deeper into the barn, and the next room we go into was a tractor repair room that was facing north. It had a big hole in the two doors that the tractor would come in on the bottom, and east and west both had holes on each side. One had a window with a broken window, and the other one had this board that slid going over to the east side. But that door behind me on my back was locked. We got that to lock, and then there's a hole right next to my shoulder that was only big enough for a hand to come through, and the hand comes through it. Is we're in there. It's
Of
Mike.
course
He's
it
trying
does.
to grab me.
Why wouldn't it?
He's trying to grab me through this little hole and drag me through this little tiny hole, not doing any kind of. But I was freaking out. My dad hits Mike's hand with the butt of his gun, and he's screaming, and he goes off, and it's quiet for a minute. And my dad's going like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. All I got is like he's a bull hunter now, and like he doesn't use his gun for anything. All he's got is birdshot, and he throws like about 6 shells down. He's going like, that's all I got. And like he starts loading his gun up more, and he peeks out the east side of the barn where there's this loose board where you can slide it back and forth that I use for like where like playing hide and seek. I could slide it and slip out of there, and he peeks out of there, and his gun's like sticking out a little bit, and all of a sudden Mike grabs the barrel of his gun and tries to get it away from him, and they're struggling with that for a couple minutes, and my dad has to fire the gun to get him to release the gun, and then it goes all quiet again, and we think everything's over with it, but just then we hear the siren coming, and it's a cop car. My mother had called the police. They thought later they told me that it was bears. When the adults approached the back of the barn, they saw it from the house. So the house was like about an acre and a half away from the barns, and they saw the adults coming back there. When Mike screamed, they called the cops. They thought it were bears. So the cops showed up to the house first. My mom redirected him to the barns. He comes down there. Just as he is pulling in, he sees Mike going in that hole in those two barn doors to the north, where you pull the tractors in there, where it's got a hole in it, and he cuts them off. And he comes in that hole. The cop does after he runs the Sasquatch off.
Hey, Randy, how big were mom and dad?
Mom and dad were. Dad was huge. Mom was only about like I would say about I'm trying to guess from a 10 years old perspective. They look
Right.
bigger, so I'm guessing she was 6.5 to 7 foot, but she was black with black skin, and I described her as King Kong because like her breasts were flat, didn't have any hair on her, hardly on her breast, but they didn't like stick up like like a normal human breast does, like they were,
Right.
more sank. So I thought I didn't know she was a she. The Native Americans later, when I tell you about it, they described her as a female. But the male was probably all of 9 foot. He was blonde and he had dark skin, and he was just wicked looking. Oh man, he was so cool looking. But they're all yelling and screaming too. Well, all this was going on, but they left as soon as my dad shot the gun. But Mike, kept on coming around. And when the cop got there and he got in, he's going to go, I cut that bear off, to coming in this room through that door out there. And like, why is he naked? And I'm like standing there naked, my dad still didn't have any time to ask me about it. And like, we had to tell him they weren't bears. And he's like, what do you mean they're not bears? And we tried to get to explain it. We didn't get too far in it. Mike tries to come in that one loose board again. There's the cops there, and they fire at him towards him, and he goes away. And then shortly after that, we had the ambulance coming. Gets redirected down to the barn, and it seems like all is quiet. So the cop and my dad decided that we got to go out and see the ambulance people. So they put me in between them. We walked out there, and I'm holding my junk and trying to not look naked. And we walk up there, and the ambulance drivers get out, and they'd shut the lights off in the siren and started opening the back of the ambulance. It was a Cadillac, like a hearse, kind of style ambulance, not like a big van like they use today. And we're standing in the back of that thing, and Mike pops out around this little milk cooler barn in between the other two barns, and just walks out in the open and stands up, and like in front of everybody. And they're like, what the hell is that? And then they shot at him again. And like, I don't know if they're trying to shoot at him or not, or just try to scare him away. He ran away. He didn't even go very far. He just peeked right on that corner again. And then that cop figured out that he didn't like the sirens. Maybe that would scare him. So he turned on both sirens of the ambulance and the cop car, and it drove him off. Well, he went up to the house. The the local conservation officer had showed up, and we're in the house, and the ambulance attendants were checking out my wound, and they said I had to go in to get stitches. That it wasn't real bad. They'd try to patch me up, and we hear some gunshots from my neighbors, multiple gunshots. We could hear it, and because it was a 30-30. And even though it was about a mile away, well, the cop gets radioed down there, and the conservation officer goes with him. And a little bit of time goes by, and we have to go to the hospital to get my stitches. And as we're leaving out of the driveway, the state cop pulls up, and he says, "Well, I was on my way home after my shift, and the locals got it. Now you can go down there and check on your friend." So we went down there before he went to the hospital to see what happened. And when we got there, my friend Tim was crying in the cornfield, trying to call for Mike, just bawling his eyes out. And the rest of the boys and the wife were packing the car up, getting there out of there. But the husband was going to stay there, and the two local cops were in there talking to him. And they also had a nanny cam because the babysitter was stealing. And yeah, they didn't have nanny cams back then. What he did was used a beta cam, which was as small as you could get, like the size of a small portable radio, and he's put it in a stuffed bear, and he ran it through the wall. I helped him do this, so that's why I know this. And he ran it to a VCR, and this actually picked up not only the babysitter doing some stuff, but picked up him shooting Mike too when he came in to try to grab Tim. And he had also missed one of the cops pointed out while I was in there talking to him when we went to the house. My dad was talking to him. He'd missed the gas line by an inch when he shot through Mike. It went through the wall behind him and missed the gas line in the house.
Real quick, I want to let everybody know too. Go check out Randy's channel. He's got some incredible artwork that it will take you through this whole encounter step by step. And I promise you, like, what you're hearing is incredible. When you put it with the pictures, it's like it's just awesome. He's a great artist in it, and the pictures are just amazing. So go check it out. It's up on the screen right now. Mid West Bigfoot Researchers. It's worth checking out. So sorry, Randy. Go ahead, brother.
That's all right, man. Thanks for the plug there. And
anytime.
I kind of learned how to draw a little bit better, but let's see, where was I? They'd told us that when they had got home and left the babysitter go home, the rest of the family got there. It wasn't too long they started hearing all this banging on the house, and it got louder and screams. It was Mike trying to get into the house. I think he went down there to try to get Tim to help me or something. But at the time, I didn't think that. We all thought that he couldn't get Randy to eat, he's going to come eat Tim. That's what everybody. That's how bad it was back then. But he breaks into this bathroom window that had a pump house underneath it at the time, and he came in through the bathroom window and went into the living room where the whole family was huddled up, and grabbed him, and they said he had taken the shot there. He tried scaring him away with a gun before he broke into the house, but then he shot to kill them, and somehow he got out of the house with a huge blood trail behind him, and that's what he told us when we were down there. And it was just the local cops. The government guys didn't show up yet until later. I had to go to the hospital after he told me this. And when I got out, the rest of his family was going to leave, and his Tim's dad, Tom, was going to stay there by himself. And I went to talk to Tim, and he was upset, cussing at his dad and everything for shooting his friend. He's like, he would have never hurt me, and blah, blah, blah. And, he was pretty upset. Well, they left, and the next day I think was a Saturday, but it was still the weekend for the Labor Day. And early in the morning, I get a call from Tom, Tim's dad, and he says, "Well, I found your friend in the creek. The government tried to find him that night. When they got there, it was late. They were going to come back with the dogs. But his dad calls me in the morning and says, 'Well, you want to come see your hairy friend before I give him to the government?' Because they showed up, and I guess later after I went to the hospital and talked to him quite a bit. And then, my turn was going to be the next day. But he said that just come over to the house, and I'd walk down there alone. I know on Bob Gimlin's show, he said my dad came with me. My dad wasn't there. I went down there by myself, and when I got to Tim's house, the neighbor boy was there. That was older than me. Said that Tim's dad was over to their house showing him the body. So I went over there, and it was only this one older boy named Brad, and his dad named Bill, the next door neighbors, and they had Mike on a picnic table out back by their pole barn, and they're checking them out and stuff like that. And they happen to be photographers, which is another coincidence, and they had their own dark room. Um, well, they got checking them out, and I don't think they had any intentions of doing anything like keeping them. But when they opened his jaw, that changed everything. They're looking at this and that, and they opened it to check his teeth out. And those teeth that I saw, and you would never know unless you did this, and we'd move the jaw down, and those back teeth were like tusks. They would seem to be attached to the top of the skull, and they would move down with the bottom of the jaw, and they're located all the way on the top, way in the back, and they would just slide down with the jaw, and they're like big canines in the back, but they're almost too far back to really do anything, like they're for show or something. But they freak these people out, and they're going like, people got to know this. And the neighbor convinced Tim's dad that they got to take pictures of it and got to dissect it.
When you say they move with the jaw, they slide down with the jaw. So like when the mouth opens, right?
Yep.
The teeth, are they like you see them kind of elongate as it opens? They come out of the gum, like a
they came out
vampire.
of like a little gum holding thing way behind the rest of the normal top rows of the teeth, like in that little space behind there, and it slid down from there, and it would slid down with the bottom of the jaw.
That's crazy.
And you would move up and down the jaw, and it would slide up and down. But you would never know that unless you played around with a dead one. But
yeah.
So things happened pretty fast. They told the older boy to go get a camera, and they were gonna dissect him. And when they cut him open, and like my dad was a hunter, and I've seen him skin rabbits and gut them and stuff. But when they did that to Mike, I threw up. It was horrible. Everything just came out, and I didn't want to look again. When Tim's dad was going like, "You got to come over here and see this." And like I looked, and the most I could see, and what I listened to, what they said exactly. Oh, is this a female? Is it a male? No, there's the penis. Where's his nuts? I can't see his nuts. He's just got a penis. Oh my God, they're inside the cavity. They're inside his cavity. Oh, they're inside the pelvis. This is what they're saying back there. He's like, he's got two sets of lungs. No, he's got one huge set of lungs. He's got two vocal. This is what they're saying back and forth. He's got two hearts. No, he doesn't. It's two hearts with one big chamber behind it. And then they stuck, I think it was a pen in the hole. They found a bullet hole that went up through the bottom, and it pierced just the bigger part of the heart. And he must have got it in there. And that second part of the heart was, still without any holes in it, and he bled out and died in the creek back there is where he found him. And I was getting kind of grossed out about it, and they started chopping off his right hand. What? And I was going to leave at that time, and they said, well, I guess there's some things I skipped over, the PBB poisoning of the cows that was going on back then that they were feeding on behind my house. And there had been a thing where the horses and cows were dying because they got some fire retardant mixed up with feed back then. And it just so happened that these neighbors that were over here with this body had like two horses that died, and they had already dug a grave for the horses. The state was picking these poisoned animals up weekly and bringing them to a mass grave up north. It was called the PBB poisoning in 1973 or 4 to 1980 or something like that. And they just lost thousands of cows, and they were piling them behind my house too. It was a pickup spot, so the farmers were piling dead cows back there, and my dad had seen some giant dogs back there feasting on them. I forgot to add that too before all this happened.
Giant dogs?
Yeah. It was at night. He would go walk the dogs down in the creek down there past the barns, and he said he saw what he thought were giant dogs with glowing red eyes down there. But he didn't tell me about that until, well, just recently before he died. When my memory came back and I confronted him about it. My mom was dead since like 2004, but I finally confronted my dad about it. I think it was like 2015 or 2014. But anyway,
This is some heavy, heavy stuff, man.
it gets worse.
I know.
So I, at that point where they were doing all that stuff to Mike, and I was getting grossed out. They didn't want me there. The other neighbor didn't like me anyway, and it just so happened the government guys were pulling into the other neighbor's house with the bloodhounds to go try to find the body, and they sent me down there to distract them, and they did, and they actually given me a ride up to my house. Um, so they buried the body, and everything was quiet for a while, and then the government did their search and didn't find anything. The weekend went by, and we went to school. Well, the idiot kid next door brought those pictures to school.
Oh,
He was in junior high, and he brought it to his like biology teacher or something like that, and next thing I knew, I was getting called down to the principal's office, and there's this kid in the elementary school sitting in the elementary school principal's office saying, like, you say anything, I'll beat the hell out of you. I didn't say anything. And I got sent back to class. I mean, they took a picture of me. I drew a picture of it. Obviously, I don't have the picture because they took all those. But when they took the pictures of the dissection and the dead body, they held up the dead body and had me pose with it with Tom with a gun and Bill and stuff like that. And they found that picture. That was one of them we took to the school, and they're gonna they couldn't get me to talk, but they had a picture of me for proof anyway. So I went through the rest of the day, and I I went home on the bus, and my neighbors were a stop before my house, the neighbor kids, and each one of their houses had carpet cleaning vans of the same carpet cleaning company at both, like 3 vans at each house. And I thought that was kind of odd because, I didn't know if they had a party down there or not. My bus driver's going like, well, you guys party down here. I had to I had to hire somebody to come in here and clean it all up. And like, I didn't know if they had a party yet or not. And those, kids were just getting off the bus and they were kind of confused too. And I get up to my house and there's carpet cleaning vans. And I'm thinking, well, that's just weird. And like, I get off the bus and our driveway is pretty short and close to the road, and immediately the curtains close, the blinds actually. And like, I'm like, oh, that's not right. And I got closer and my dad's car was there. He was home from work, he doesn't usually go home for a couple more hours. And then I see a bunch of people inside the kitchen window there, and they all kind of like move away from the window. And I started running. And I was just going to get the hell out of there. I didn't get too far, and the kitchen door flew open. The one that went to the mudroom outside, and a bunch of National Guard come and tackle me and drag me back in the house, and they start questioning me. They duct taped me down to this chair and said that I knew where the body was and started questioning me over and over again. I didn't say anything. And the Native American guy that I told you about, that called himself John Redcorn, was there, and he was the one questioning me. And he didn't even question me for very long and just decided, well, I'm not going to play any games. He's been there all day talking to, he had the other 2 guys come home from work too. And he couldn't get them to talk, and they couldn't find the body. And he was there questioning them all day, not getting anything out of them. And now I'm not saying anything. And he was fed up by then. He goes out to his car and he comes back with a briefcase and opens it up. And it's like sodium pentothal with needles and all that. And like, I started freaking out, and like 3 National Guard were going like, oh no, no. They drew their guns on that guy, 3 of them, but there was like 4 or 5 other National Guard guys that already had my parents separated in other rooms at gunpoint. And
what the hell?
Yeah, and they all drew guns on each other, but there was more bad guys than there was good guys. And they took the 3 guys out, and 3 guys are going like, fight, 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 so like I tried to not say anything, but he gave me the sodium pentothal after he took care of that, and I still wouldn't say anything. And we sat there for a while, and he's going, I give up. And he threw me in a corner, and I was still duct tape at the hands and feet, and in a little while, he goes like, "Yeah, you're ready now." I'll grab his shoulders, and the National Guards grabbed me just like that because they knew I'd run. Threw me in one of those carpet cleaning vans and took me down to where they had the neighbors and threw me in front of them and said, "Now where's the body?" And like I still wouldn't say anything, but I looked where Tim's dad was, and it just happened to be right behind Tim's dad was the pile of dirt with the picnic table flipped over on top of it, where Mike was buried. And all of a sudden, the head guy there goes like, "Oh, we got some fresh dirt down here. Get down here." Like they took the one guy's backhoe and dug Mike up and stuff like that and found his hand. And they were going to take me right off to get hypnotized right then and there. But they didn't have anything but cleaning vans, so they took me back up to my house and waited for a car. And then they took me to Grand Rapids and had me hypnotized. Forgot about it. So when I got back, the other kids weren't hypnotized yet, and they're all pissed off at me because they thought I'd, ratted out their dad, so they beat the hell out of me. And then it just goes on and on. It's like they finally got, to where they got to the house and got the pictures and got the body and got all that stuff recovered and took the other kids in. But it was a nightmare.
This is, I mean, I tried to let people know that this was one of the most compelling, crazy stories I've ever heard. And this is like, I don't know, I think I listened to it, obviously the first time, and then I went back and listened to it like two or three more times just because I was so completely like, I was just, I was stuck, and I had to keep listening over and over to make sure that I was getting everything the right way, because so much of it seems, crazy, but these are the things that are so important for people to understand, that these things are real, they're out there, they're everywhere. Not only that, there are people out there who don't want you to know that they're there. And if you have a certain encounter, if you're somebody who's got some real traction in this community and you got a ton of ears and eyes watching you, they'll try to stop it. They'll do things to try to stop it. Just like they came and they tried to get you to tell them something that you didn't know, and you're a child and they're giving you sodium pentothal. I mean, this is like villains from Batman. Like,
Yeah, I know.
you know what I mean? Like they're shooting up a
This guy
child.
did get reprimanded and he did get, kicked out and everything like that. But, he did his damage first. But he also tried to make things right. But he still had me, hypnotized from time to time. What they did is I didn't remember them after that day. They had me hypnotized or forget about it. All of a sudden they show back up to my house, because there was other two local tribe members that what they did were the two tribes that shared this land where they thought Mike was from, where he wasn't. But like that's a whole nother story. He was really from Strawberry Lake, and they thought he was from that woods where he took the kid. They came back with a hand supposedly and ashes that they had it. And this Cherokee guy that called himself John Rodcore, and Jerry had set it up to where he could these two local elders from these other two tribes would spread his ashes out there, and they took me with them. And then after that, they kind of liked me because they knew I wouldn't have anything really to do with hiding the body. They took me to a lot of other tribal meetings with like the Chippewa and some of the other tribes further up in the UP, and they told them over and over what happened to me and what a Sasquatch was. That's why I say when they're Neanderthal, that's what they were telling them. They weren't telling me that. Although they did tell me I was playing with a caveman, but sounds so funny. But and when we think of caveman, they're I think of something stupid too, which is that
Yeah, no,
they're incredibly intelligent. I mean,
incredibly intelligent.
and when I remembered all this and started giving up my whole life just to go find out the truth, and I was when my dad died, he finally told me, and then like he died like just a few days later. It was really bizarre too, and he died right in the hospital. And I had a massive heart attack, and he had told me about all this stuff and confirmed it. And I just went on my own. I went to the state archives to find fines. I went to, because they find them for there was even a newspaper article about the one guy, Bill, getting hit for burying his horses with a quote unquote wild animal that was, he didn't have a license to kill and bury or something like that. Something really simple like that. But I couldn't find the Channel 13 footage either that the news coverage did when the boy was missing. That was gone. But I went to archives and looked through microfiche for years, and the Strawberry Lake stuff I did find. Though I did find the newspaper article on the two kids getting blamed for wrecking the logging equipment and everything like that. And I haven't found the other one yet, though. I got to go back up there and look through all this microfiche on this old museum in a little back room that I could barely even see around with a flashlight and look through all this old crap. And I've been doing this for years, plus going out and researching in the field and like having them follow me home. Because not literally follow me home, but I live on a lake where there's 32,000 acres of state land right off the back of my property. So when I say follow me home, I meant they're around this area, and they started making it known after a while that they were there, and I was really surprised. I've got to see them so many times without a camera, but
I had a chuckle yesterday when we talked. When you said you stepped on its feet.
Yeah, I was going through any lengths to see how close I could get them, and I didn't know they would get that close. But I would go out there barefoot with just my shorts and t-shirt on in this one area that I already cleared all the way the path out there behind my house into the swamp, and I would just use a little red light that fits on my broom and my hat, because I shined them actually one time in their eyes, and they got really pissed before that, and I didn't want to do that again. I tried to keep cameras and everything away from just this tribe that's close to me, just to see how close they would get. And I was leaving a bucket of was apples and bananas, and sometimes I'd slip on a Pop-Tart or something, and hanging up on a tree, only about 5.5, 6 feet up on this branch. And they got used to it after a while, and like this little one would come out there, and I can't see. I walk out there and then hang the light with my little red light, and then I'd shut it off, and like I could see enough to where I could walk, but I can't see this little black dude, like 3.5 feet tall. He'd go come up there and grab the bucket as soon as I put it up there behind me, as soon as I turn around and walk. And one time I turned around, and he's standing right behind me, and I stepped on his foot, and he's like literally not even as tall as my shoulder, and just screamed bloody murder in my ear. And like I thought I stepped on my cat or something. It was really shocking. It was they didn't come that close anymore after that. But like I've actually got footage one time when they were about 5 or 10 feet away, and it's on my YouTube channel. And I didn't want to get footage of them. I didn't want to. I had trail cameras out there, and they were throwing rocks at me when I was changing the SD cards, and I knew they didn't like them, so I tried not to use them. And I tested my one of my cameras one time, and I went out there, and they didn't answer me, and I figured they weren't there. So I had this new camera, and I had a red light on, and I just turned it on for a minute, and like I shined this tree next to me with this red light, and they popped out right next to me. I mean, you can see them clear as day, but it's all underneath the red, light, and I shut it off right away. And it's like I didn't want to. I mean, they really got mad when last time I did that. Put the light in their eyes and stuff. Because so half of the times you think they're going to run away when they hide, and like you think they're gone, you can't see them anymore. So what do you do naturally? You turn a bright light on.
Oh, yeah.
Oh no, you don't like that. No.
They
were hissing at me and everything.
This is where I tend to think sometimes that people are we were kind of joking using the word tagged or chosen, and I don't know why or how, but it seems to be that people who have these encounters that happen, that you're not going in the woods looking for them. You don't know they exist. you're unaware, and you have a surprise encounter with these things, and it changes your life. Like, it completely changes your life. For me, my encounter was aggressive the first time, so I was scared to go back in the woods. But I'm sorry, the puppy's next to me. If you hear squeaking, that's Maverick playing with his toy. His whole schedule got totally screwed up today because I had the worst day ever. So he normally be asleep right now, and he's awake, and I was worried. I was totally worried about this. So if you're squeaking, it's him killing his lamb chop. But so I think that, like, when certain people are chosen, I really do, because they end up being the people who these things show themselves to, and they gravitate to, because I promise you, just because you see one day and you decide you're going to go in the woods, doesn't mean they're going to show themselves to you or you're going to have encounters with them. I really believe that there's something to this, that people have some sort of energy that they pick up on, or I don't know, because you had your encounter when you were young with this baby thing, and he was a friend to you. You know what I mean? Like, for all intents and purposes, and now you've had many experiences since then.
I don't know if it has to do with what, how I've been with the animals. I'm always out there catching frogs and snakes, and
Me
I'm not
too.
going out there, like some kids like to kill stuff and blow things up. I don't know if that has something to do with the personality that they pick out or whatever, but it helps if you don't have fear of them, because like I said, they have if they're the Neanderthal, they have the same pheromones as we do. If we get scared, they're going to smell our fear pheromones, and then when they get scared, their pheromones emit, and they're way stronger than ours and make us more scared. And it just makes the whole, plus, like you said, your first time you see something like that, you're going to be startled, if not scared or terrified, but especially if you're not prepared for it or if you don't know anything about them.
Right. Yeah. When you're not prepared and you don't have any idea, and then you have a face-to-face encounter with when I was speaking with one of my subscribers today, Rachel. I haven't seen you in the chat except for earlier, but we had a nice conversation today, and she had a friend whose husband is a lifelong hunter, and him and his brother were out hunting like they have done for their whole lives. This is a guy who's in his mid to late 40s, I believe she said. So this guy's hunted for 30 plus years in the woods, like constantly. He would go on 2-week expeditions. You know what I'm saying? This is what he did. And his whole time out there, nothing ever happened. Well, guess what? It happened. It finally happened, and he was not prepared. They were, and nobody, and that's the thing. I don't think you can be if you don't know. If you're not a knower, or you don't have the belief that they're out there, and even then, I don't know that you can be fully prepared. But at least you have some baseline where you can go, all right, I know I'm going to these woods, and there's a possibility they could be out there. I need to pay attention to my surroundings and to the signs, because with my case and with so many others, they gave us signs that they didn't want us there, that we were going too far into their territory, and we didn't listen. And these guys probably got signs too, but they just didn't know. They had no idea when they were not hearing knocks on trees or branches breaking, or they thought probably acorns were falling near them when it was rocks being thrown at them. If you don't know, then you brush the stuff off, or you write it off as something else. And then it happens. And when it happens, you're not prepared. It's a visceral reaction. It is a fear response like nothing I've ever felt in my life. And it's because you're staring at a giant hairy monster, a monster. You know what I mean? And I don't say that. I say that only from that place of ignorance. Once you once you delve into this subject, like most of us do, or many of us do after we have these encounters, and you start to learn what these things really are, um, it's hard not to have some level of emotional attachment to them. Like I feel like I have an emotional connection to them because I know that they're my relative. They're related to us somehow. I don't know how far down the line, but I know that they're related to us, and I fully believe that their place here and purpose here on this earth is much, much bigger than
We can understand.
yeah, way bigger. But yeah.
There's a lot of things that you could go into that I've learned from them, like even the simple fact of like Strawberry Lake in my new home where I just moved is about an hour apart in a drive, and how did he find me?
Yeah.
How could you find somebody? I mean, I've found people when I way before cell phones when I was a kid, and if I want to go maybe find somebody in a town or something, I'd have an intuition where they are, but there's something else to their just following a scent to be able to find somebody. Plus, a lot of the other things they do is just like things I don't think we can quite comprehend or understand yet. That um, maybe it's because we have so few senses compared to theirs. Our hearing and our eyesight is terrible compared to just about every other creature on Earth. So,
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
and like you said, a lot of our senses have been dulled from technology and language, and
Mhm.
yeah, it's uh, you can get in touch a little bit more if you spend a lot of time in the woods and stuff, but you're still a tame animal.
Yeah, we're so far removed, and even the people um, who are really special and gifted, the ones who were born with those gifts and those gifts never left them. People who have telekinetic powers or people who have psychic mediumship, stuff like that. They have those gifts, and that's a real special thing. But he, they even those people have to continuously work to keep those gifts or to harness those gifts and use them the right way, um, or they lose them, and it's because we just don't have that connection anymore. We're pushed so far away from it, and uh, I wonder why that is. I wonder if well, I don't wonder. I know that a lot of it is intentional by the people who are in charge of things, who are just evil for the most
Well,
part.
yeah, we're taught from as soon as we go to school to ignore those kind of senses, and
Right,
basically to become sheep.
right.
And
Yep.
not and so much that way, but like basically be more obedient. Don't think outside of the box. Don't ever do that. I had to when that stuff happened when I was a kid. I was at the time going to a Catholic school. My mother drove a bus, and only went to that school for that year. She uh, lost that job, and they couldn't afford to have me go. And I went back to public school. But when that happened, I was talking about it in school, after, because we had a thing where, what do you do for summer? Well, I play with a bunch of monkeys at Strawberry Lake. And I was telling everybody else, they called me into the office, and these nuns are talking to me about it. And the weirdest thing was, um, they introduced me to this one great big, huge, stocky nun. And she was an old farm girl. And she's going like, I know what those were. And those weren't chimps. They were like, she said they're demons. And like, and went on about all this stuff, and they didn't like me too much. They called me a demon child. They sent me
Oh
to
my
summer school. That
goodness.
yeah,
Um,
I'm glad I didn't go to that school very much longer. But
Somebody's
that was just
asking.
weird because like it was just like she comes in this. I I was called to the office almost like they knew what the subject was. Like they had her in there, and then when I started talking about it, they got me to talk about it, and they're going like, "Well, here's such and such, and she's going to talk to you about what she did when she was a kid, and she had all these encounters, and she said they're, some sort of biblical demons and stuff like that, fallen angels, and they appear to be really nice, but they'll get you to do nasty stuff and blah blah blah. I can't remember all the details. I was only 8, and I've been trying to pick that up out of my subconscious and try to work on that, but I can't seem to remember a whole lot about it.
It's all right.
But none scare me now.
Yeah, I don't blame you. They scare me too. So someone in the chat is asking, did Mike's mother and father ever return to make their presence known again?
Oh yeah, that's right. We had the body out when I got down there to the neighbors, when they had the body at the picnic table, they popped up down there too, and Tom had his gun down there for some reason. I don't know if he actually expected that to happen or not, but he'd brought his gun down there and shot at him to scare him away. After that, they showed up a couple times down at my barn after that, but I didn't know what they were then. I was already hypnotized to forget it, and I just freaked out, and I thought they were big dogs. Because they would come up behind there to not be seen on all fours, and get down as low as they can.
Yeah.
And because they're longer arms, they can do that. But
there's a perfect example. So I saw the one that I saw in Bridgewater. I told this a few times now. He was this thing, and I just talked to a couple people, researcher friends recently, and I came to the conclusion that this thing was probably more close to 10 feet or 11 feet tall, and over 1,000 pounds, 1,200 pounds. I mean, just completely, massively monstrous. But he was down on all fours when we first saw him, and on his fingers and toes, holding all that weight up and moving, scurrying like a cockroach. It was
yeah, they do that good.
Yeah, scurrying. It was the creepiest thing. But Snow White Bigfoot, she has ongoing activity at her house. Angie, she's amazing. If you've never watched her channel, she has an ongoing Bigfoot diary that goes back quite a while from when they first started interacting with her. She lives, it's beautiful. Where she lives is beautiful. It's like a fairy tale. I swear to God. Her backyard, her garden, everything. But there's a picture, or there's a clip in Christopher Noel's video, his documentary, How to See a Sasquatch. And in that clip, she is walking through her yard, and she just decides to throw the camera around over her shoulder and film backwards. And she catches one in the grass on all fours. My cats are trying to kill each other now. Yeah, it's an animal house. They're all going crazy today. Is it a full moon?
Just about.
Yeah. So they catch one on all fours in the grass. And if you've never watched Christopher Noel's movie, How to See a Sasquatch, I suggest you watch it because it's pretty amazing. That picture is crazy. Again, this giant thing down on all fours, belly crawling in the grass. Would have never seen it. Walk right by it. Didn't see it at all.
Yep, that's another thing when a lot of time in the woods they'll hang under a lot of that brush that's hanging, really low.
Yeah.
And have a whole bunch of shade underneath it where it's got that little space behind it where it droops over in the front like that. And they'll look for spots like that, especially if there's a little hole underneath it, or a little anything to hide behind like that. And they're amazing. I'm getting tired. Sorry.
No, you're good. It's okay. But you got other stuff that you want to share, because I remember we talked about this. You still have other stuff you want to talk about? Because if you're getting tired, we can.
No, that's all right. I'll just most people don't get into the newer stuff that I've found out since I've been doing my own research, and kind of waking back up to it again. And when I first started it, it was amazing because I didn't even know what I was walking into. I first started going in the woods where Mike was taken, the boy Mike, and I would go there at night, and I only thought they were only nocturnal and everything. Pretty green when I first started, and they would call to me all the time at night and run around me going whoop whoop whoop. They don't do that anymore. They did that for that whole first summer. It was amazing, and but I never saw anything. And I didn't really think there were living here. I didn't really think there were that many, and especially close to my house. I was then just checking out swamps and looking at different areas, and I thought I'd go down in the swamp and at least, I look for snakes and I look for frogs still. I'm still a kid, and I get down to the edge of the swamp, and this swamp's pretty close to houses, and I wouldn't expect anything to be there in there. And I see something run by the edge of the swamp in between these two bushes there, where I could see it for like about 5 or 6 feet, and it looked like to me like a wild boar. It was really small and black, and I could see the hair on it, and it's like, wait a minute, there's no wild pigs around here. I just saw a Sasquatch, a little juvenile Sasquatch on all fours. So I ran up out of the swamp, and there's a road that goes in between that small swamp into another big one that goes way back to another lake and way further back. And I figured they'd try to cross there, and I just sat there and waited for a long time. They never showed up. So I went back, and I had my camera with me too the whole time, by the way. Yeah, I never raised it fast enough, though. I went back, and I saw another a stick marking with there's like a TP stick thing, and I started taking a picture of it. And I got back up to the road where my bike was. I was riding a bike, and the juvenile's standing by my bike hissing at me, and he runs off into the bush. And he's only like about 3.5 feet tall. Honest to God, he looked just like Eddie Monster. He had black hair and black skin. And he had like a widow's peak in the front. And I saw something that really big move in the brush, and it looked like a deer. But I knew it wasn't a deer. I knew they were messing with my head, because it was like 6 feet up, 7 feet up. And I was going like, this is amazing, and after that is when they started showing up near my house, and, started feeding them and stuff like that. It was just, there was times where I went to, spots I shouldn't have, that I found out where they were living, and I had just one camera. My, it was a GoPro Session Series 5 or something like that, and a real small one on the headband. And I was sitting in the swamp. I wasn't seeing anything. And they were like coming up behind me, these little juveniles on these trees. And I got this on camera because I would turn my head, and they had a wide angle lens enough where I could see this little hand slap me in the back of my head every once in a while. I just went and they go like ping, like that, and hit me in my head.
Little bastard.
There was those are the ones that started coming over, and one of the ones I stepped on his foot, that the one I call Eddie, and the other one looks like Chaka from Land of the Lost. He's like blonde like that.
Yeah.
He's got a really pointy nose, and he's got like a really goofy looking forehead. That's the one I got really good footage of peeking around a tree. He looks just like Chaka. I'm like, oh my God, that doesn't look like a Sasquatch. It looks like Chaka. That's fake. I'm like, no, you can see their eye shine and everything too. It's really incredible footage, but like nobody's ever made a big deal about it. They're like 10 feet away from me, and you can see everything on their face and see them move and everything. But yeah, I've been doing that, and then I told you about the neighbors started seeing them more when they're showing up around here, and they started showing up watching the neighbor kids go back to this one place they party in, this one garage pole barn / thing on the back of their property where the swamp meets it and stuff. And they're hiding back there, and I was watching them watch these kids, every once in a while. And pretty soon an older lady next door was seeing them, and she liked them. She thought they were pretty cool, but the other neighbors didn't like it, and they started shooting guns back there. They called the DNR, and they had the helicopter that was all black showing up here, and had like a big thermal thing underneath it. And it went right over my property, like right over the treetops, and followed back right where I walked back. I mean, like it was nothing. That trail I went back to where I mean back in the swamp. And that was it. That was like, I had like 5 or 6 good years of seeing them almost every single night during the summer, where I was bringing bananas and apples and get within 5 feet or so. And I wouldn't do much. I would go out there and communicate. And I went, I would make a different noise every night, like I did when I was a kid. I tried barking, and I tried doing a cow. And one night I did a duck. And the next night after following, this is specific, I did a baby cry after I did the duck the next night. And I heard like a, just like that. in the swamp, like he was laughing, like one of the bigger ones was laughing. Then he makes this noise that sounded just like a cross between a baby's crying and a duck. I don't know what he must have not knew what I was making, like he thought I was trying to make a duck noise. And then he would make that sound every night for like 3 nights. Every time he saw me, he would make this half baby and half duck noise. And like I knew it was him right away. He was like,
Oh, that was good.
picking on me and shit.
That was good.
I really miss them though. I really wish the neighbors and drove them away. Now they're just, I got to go miles and miles, and I don't know where they're at half the time.
I get it though, and that's what I'm talking about. I think they have this. I don't know. This. They just have a pure soul or something. That once you have the interactions with them, it's really hard to just walk away from that. It makes you want to continue going back and having more, because they're passive animals. They're not aggressive unless they feel like you've intruded in their immediate area, like where their family is.
Trying to hurt them or disrespect them or
right.
protecting their young. They gotta have a reason. They're just not
right.
People don't understand. I understand when you see them, you think you get this primitive thing going on in your head, like, oh, he's going to eat me, he's a cannibal, or no, that isn't. I mean, if that were the case, there'd be dead people everywhere when they go in the woods every single day, and like that's not their MO. They're not out to they're not out to hurt us and eat us like a lot of people think they are. You just can get over the fear if you ever see one. A lot of cool things happen.
It's very true. It's very true. This dog's I feel bad, but he's about to have to go outside now, I think. If I don't know if you have more to talk about, but if you want to come back on another episode, I'd love to have you back to discuss anything else you want. If you got evidence you want to show, pictures, video, anything, dude, like you're welcome on this channel anytime. Like, this was amazing.
All right, well, thanks for having me on, and go let your dog go pee.
Everybody, please check out Randy's channel, Mid West Bigfoot Researchers on YouTube. It's a wonderful channel. You cannot tell me that this was not a riveting encounter. And the dude's an amazing artist. When you see the pictures that go with this, it just makes it that much better. So please go check him out. Everybody who showed up tonight, thank you so much. I love you all. Have a great night and be safe. And I'll catch you on the next one. Good night, everybody.
See ya.